honor to be our MC for today's session. This event is proudly presented by Center of Japanese Studies, Universitas Indonesia, and Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia, with the support by the Japanese Foundation. This online seminar is held as a part of the International Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium 2026, a program that is dedicated to exploring how studies with relation to Japan are practiced across Southeast Asia. This seminar series is held monthly and invites scholars from various universities in the region to share their research perspective and insight. Our aim is to showcase the diverse trends, methodologies, and scholarly approach shaping the Japanese studies in the Southeast Asian context. Although we also hope to nurture cross-border dialogue and strengthen academic collaboration among researchers, students, and institutions in the region. International Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium 2026 consists of three main components. The ongoing research workshop held at the Center for Japanese Studies, Universitas Indonesia, since the beginning of April. This monthly online seminar series and an international symposium scheduled for August 4 and 5, 2026 at the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. Together, those events aim to foster regional academic engagement and promote the growth of Japanese studies in Southeast Asia. We are truly delighted to have you with us today, whether you are a scholar, a student, or simply passionate about Japanese studies. So let's make the most, the most of the opportunity to connect, learn, and grow together. Without further ado, let us begin today's session. Before we go into our main agenda, let us first get to know about the organization who have collaborated to make today's event possible. So let us watch the profile video of the Center of Japanese Studies, Universitas Indonesia, and the Faculty of Humanities of Universitas Indonesia.
Minasan konnichiwa. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Center for Japanese Studies, or in Indonesian, Pusat Studi Jepang at Universitas Indonesia. Since our founding in 1995, we have been committed to deepening the mutual understanding between Indonesia and Japan through research, academic exchange, and collaborative programs. Today, with a renewed vision, we focused on three main pillars: academic activities, cultural interactions, and community services. With this broader mission, we aim to foster not only academic connections between Indonesia and Japan, but also wider cultural exchanges with communities beyond by sharing our passion for Japanese studies. We warmly invite you to join us on this journey through meaningful collaboration and shared commitment to cross-cultural understanding. Let's work together to build a more connected future. 一緒に頑張りましょう。
Since its founding in 1995, PSJUI has played a significant role in strengthening academic and cultural cooperations between Indonesia and Japan. In late 2023, we will align our visions and missions to better reflect Universitas Indonesian goals and broaden our role in engaging with communities. Our vision is to be leading, professional, and independent research institution built on three core pillars: academics, cultural interactions, and community engagement. These three pillars are implemented through a variety of programs and events, organized directly by PSJUI or in collaborations with strategic partners. One of our flagship programs is Kutu Buku, a book discussion series that fosters critical engagement with Japan-related academic and cultural works. In the realms of cultural interactions, we organize YYJ Culture, an event that celebrates Japanese pop culture, and the Music and Culture Seminar, which explores intersections between Japanese and Indonesian musical traditions. we work closely with the Embassy of Japan in Indonesia to present the ambassadorial lecture featuring the Japanese ambassador as keynote speaker, and the Max Scholarship Seminar, which provides valuable information about studying in Japan. In collaboration with the Japan Foundation, we hold the Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Seminar and the second International Conference of New Frontiers in Japanese Studies. Additionally, we also host one of the sessions of Japan Scope, a public lecture series on Japanese studies by the Japan Foundation's Jakarta. Together with the Japan Foundations and the Indonesian Associations for Japanese Studies, or ASTI, we also co-host the ASTI International Symposium and Seminar. With the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, and the Faculty of Humanities Universitas Indonesia, we launched the modernizations of Japan Lecture Series, while our partnership with Salle allow us to serve a certified testing center for the examinations for Japanese university admissions for international students, or AJU. With Asia to Japan, we implement the fast-over Japanese language and career training program, supporting students' professional development for careers in Japan. And in collaboration with Tsuji Culinary School and Aka Monkai Japanese Language School, we host the Japanese Business and Culture Seminar, which introduce practical insights into Japanese corporate and culinary culture. One of our greatest resources is the PSTUI Library, with the collections in Japanese, English, and Indonesian, including books, journals, and digital archives. Our library connects communities to world-class resources. These collections come from JICA, Japan Foundations, Toyo Keizai, Daido Life Foundation, the Jakarta Japan Club, the Red Japan Projects, and individuals donors. Our library is more than a space. It is a bridge between cultures. As part of our commitment to community engagement, PSJUI is making its facilities accessible not only to the university community, but also to the general public. These spaces are open for various academic, cultural, and collaborative activities, allowing more people to engage directly with our programs and resources. Thank you for your continued support. Together, let us strengthen our collaborations and build a future where academic and cultural ties between Indonesia and Japan grow ever deeper.
Universitas Indonesia is the best campus in Indonesia and one of the leading academic institutions in the world with the highest achievement in discovery, development, and diffusion of the humanities globally.
Sejalan dengan visi dan misi Universitas Indonesia, Fakultas Ilmu Pengetahuan Budaya Universitas Indonesia senantiasa menghasilkan manusia berkualitas yang memiliki kompetensi dan komitmen untuk kemajuan kebudayaan. FIB UI menjadikan kebudayaan sebagai investasi untuk membangun masa depan dan peradaban bangsa demi terwujudnya tujuan nasional sebagaimana diamanatkan Pancasila dan Undang-Undang Dasar 1945.
The faculty was originally named Fakultas Sastra or the Faculty of Letters Universitas Indonesia when it was established in 1940. In its development, the Faculty of Letters also studied cultural sciences and humanities. Thus, since 2002, its name was changed into Fakultas Ilmu Pengetahuan Budaya or the Faculty of Humanities or FIB for short, Universitas Indonesia. Academically, FIB UI also contribute to Universitas Indonesia's achievement in the 2023 QS World University Rankings by subject. In arts and humanities, FIB UI ranks first in Indonesia and fifth in Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, for modern languages, it ranks among the 200 highest institutions in the world. Similarly, in the 2024 Times Higher Education World University Rankings or the world by subject in arts and humanities, FIB UI ranks first in Indonesia and ranks 401 from 500 in the world. FIB UI is also committed to making the campus environment free from corruption, collusion, and nepotism through the Universitas Indonesia Zone Integrity Award and achieving a green sustainable campus through the UI Green Metric World University Rankings. As an internationally leading educational and research institution under the 7 departments studying the humanities in FIB UI, we have study programs ranging from undergraduate programs, master's degree programs, and doctoral programs. The undergraduate program aims to prepare students to become intellectuals or scientists who are able to develop themselves into professionals. The objective of the master's degree program is to create competent scientists with the ability to develop and apply the humanities. The doctoral program aims to produce graduates capable of contributing to the development and application of knowledge, technology, art, and culture to solve national problems as well as advance human civilization. The graduate programs of FIB UI always become the best talent center with the teaching staff who have professional or competency certification as well as experience as practitioners.
Belajar di program studi Indonesia dan program studi sastra Jawa FIB UI membuat kami semakin memahami dan memiliki sudut pandang baru dalam kajian bahasa nasional dan daerah. Hal ini membuat kami selalu berusaha untuk melestarikan dan memperkenalkan khasanah budaya negara kita.
Dalam perkuliahan di program studi berbasis bahasa asing, kami tidak hanya mempelajari bahasa, sastra, sejarah, dan kebudayaan negara lain, tetapi juga menumbuhkan kepekaan dan kemampuan dalam mengkaji berbagai gejala budaya, sehingga akan membekali kami dalam melanjutkan langkah kami. Saat ini, kepustakaan juga fokus pada kajian humaniora, digital humanities, dan big data analysis yang banyak dibutuhkan oleh perusahaan nasional maupun luar negeri. Sehingga kami mampu mengelola lembaga informasi berbasis teknologi informasi dan komunikasi dengan kreatif, inovatif, dan beretika.
Kami di sini belajar meneliti dan menelaah berbagai jenis data artefak dan historis dengan berpikir secara sistematis serta bekerja sama secara profesional. Namun, yang juga penting, kami tahu bagaimana cara mengkomunikasikan hasilnya kepada masyarakat.
Lingkungan di sini membentuk karakter kami untuk mengkaji permasalahan yang relevan dengan kebudayaan. Untuk kemudian ditemukan akar masalahnya sehingga dapat dihasilkan solusi melalui analisis dan argumentasi yang terstruktur secara sahih dan benar.
Sebagai mahasiswa program magister, kami dibentuk untuk selalu berpikir kritis, solutif, dan inovatif dalam menerapkan keilmuan yang dimiliki, sehingga mampu menyelesaikan masalah sosial budaya baik dalam konteks lokal maupun global.
Dalam program doktor, kami diarahkan untuk membuat produk keilmuan yang inovatif, original, dan teruji. Selain itu, juga mampu memecahkan masalah dalam bidang keilmuan melalui pendekatan interdisiplin, multidisiplin, atau transdisiplin.
FIB UI has implemented the Merdeka Belajar Kampus Merdeka or MBKM or the Freedom to Learn Independent Campus curriculum since 2020. Several MBKM programs for students are, among others, the Dikti Flagship MBKM program and various programs initiated by FIB UI with partners, such as internship programs at domestic and foreign partner institutions, internship programs in special work units and various service units at FIB UI, as well as lectures held in collaboration with partners from abroad. We emphasize on the development of human resources through the development of students' potential to enable them to become superior academicians in the humanities. we continue to improve our services and facilities to achieve world-class standards. As for facilities and infrastructure that are in line with the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, FIBUI has provided renewable energy to support green metric UI and SDGs through the use of carport solar panels, wider 5G Wi-Fi facilities, and the application of an electronic document and archives management system. In our daily activities, we foster an atmosphere based on simplicity, mobility, adaptive learning, reputation, and technology or smart to support all FIBUI programs in producing quality graduates with technical abilities, skills, and humanistic perspectives. To achieve FIBUI's vision, we have implemented 5 programs, namely curriculum development based on adaptive and innovative education, impactful research, good governance, collaboration with the industrial community and working world, and entrepreneurship to produce graduates capable of developing the creative industry. We also continue to establish national and international collaboration to carry out various programs such as the implementation of education, student and lecturer exchange, internship, collaborative research, and many other partnership programs. FIBUI has 2 business units working in the field of language and culture, namely Lembaga Bahasa Internasional or International Language Institution and Pusat Penelitian Kemasyarakatan dan Budaya or Community and Cultural Research Center. FIBUI students conduct many non-academic activities that foster creativity, competence, and skills to complement their abilities when they become full-fledged academicians and or professionals. This is proven by the fact that many FIBUI alumni have succeeded to contribute to their science, nation, and the world. Serving with knowledge, connecting the diversity, international recognition, advancing culture, and becoming a home for diversity.
Now that we are introduced to the organization behind today's event, let us jump straight into today's agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, in this online seminar series, we will thorough insight on the distinguished scholars representing leading institutions in the region. In today's session, we are joined by first, Bridget Vilog from the Salle University, Philippines. Then, Hafiizh Hashim from University Brunei Darussalam, Brunei, and Azhariyah from Universitas Hasanuddin, Indonesia. And now, to lead us through today's seminar, we are pleased to introduce our moderator, Himawan Pratama, PhD. Himawan Pratama Sensei, or also known as Himawan Sensei, is a lecturer at the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. Since 2023, he has been serving as the head of the Center for Japanese Studies at the same university. He is also an active member of the Indonesian Association for Japanese Studies, or ASJ, and serves as a member of the steering committee of the Japanese Studies Association of Southeast Asia.
Indomie!
Himawan Sensei obtained his PhD in Japan Studies from Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. His research interests include cultural representation of otherness in various forms of contemporary Japanese media, spanning popular culture, mass media, and party narrative. Himawan Sensei, the floor is yours.
Okay, am I audible? Can you hear my voice, Paris? Okay, thank you for the introduction, Paris. Good morning, everyone. My name is Himawan, as introduced.
I am a faculty member of the Japanese Studies program at the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia, and now serving as the head of the Center for Japanese Studies at the same university. Again, welcome to the online seminar series on Japanese Studies in Southeast Asia. This is a monthly online event with an aim to introduce the diversity of Japanese studies in the region. As introduced by Paris, this series is a part of the International Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium 2026, organized by the Center for Japanese Studies and the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia, and supported by the Japan Foundation. Today is the second edition of the series, and we are very honored to have three distinguished speakers. Ron Bridget Vilog Sensei from the Salle University, the Philippines, Hafiizh Hashim Sensei from Universiti Brunei Darussalam, and Ayu Azhariyah Sensei from Universitas Hasanuddin, Indonesia. Let me explain how the session will progress. First, all of the three speakers will give a talk introducing their research in and views on Japanese studies in about 20 minutes. After that, we will enter the question and answer session where we invite all of us to participate in the discussion. All right, without further ado, let us begin by inviting our first speaker, Dr. Ron Bridget Vilog, whom I usually call Ron Sensei. He will be bringing a presentation titled Migration Diplomacy under Marcos and Takaichi, Rethinking Bilateral Frameworks of Japan and the Philippines. This is a very timely topic, particularly because the two leaders, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae, have recently met with each other in Japan, marking the upgrade of the Philippines-Japan relations to comprehensive strategic partnership. Before we begin, please let me read Ron Sensei's short bio. Dr. Ron Bridget Vilog is an associate professor in the Department of International Studies at the Salle University. He is also a member of the IJSRWS ASEAN Steering Committee. His research focuses on international migration, migrant labor, and the welfare of overseas workers, particularly within the Filipino diaspora. He has examined issues such as inequality during the pandemic, labor conditions in Japan's care industry under the Economic Partnership Agreement scheme, and the experiences of Filipino workers in conflict zones like Libya. Using narrative-based approaches, his work highlights the vulnerabilities, agency, and resilience of migrant workers in complex global contexts. Okay, Ron Sensei, the floor is yours. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just share my screen.
Yes, we can see it now, Ron Sensei.
All right. Am I coming in clear? How about the audio?
Yes, the audio is clear and the visual is also clear.
Okay. Again, pleasant morning or afternoon to all of you. My name is Ron Vilog from the Department of International Studies of De La Salle University, Manila, the Philippines. Before I start, I'd like to thank the organizers of this seminar. Of course, we have Himawan Pratama Sensei and the organizing committee from the Universitas Indonesia. The presentation of my presentation this morning is titled Migration Diplomacy under Marcos and Takaichi, Rethinking Bilateral Frameworks of Japan and the Philippines. So basically, this is an ongoing project. But I'd like to share, of course, some of the highlights of the research that we do in Japanese studies, particularly coming from the academic community of the Philippines. No, so it's basically an investigation of how migrants are managed by the two administrations, and as Himawan Sensei mentioned, this is very timely because, of course, the two leaders had actually met in the past days, talking about, the bilateral relationship of Japan and the Philippines, and very, of course, very relevant to our region, Southeast Asia. No, so again, just to emphasize this point. Sanae Takaichi, as we all know, is a Japanese, is the Prime Minister of Japan and President of the LDP since October 2025. So pretty much, on her first year of leadership, while Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is the president here in the Philippines from 2022. Following, of course, uh, uh, following our previous president, Rodrigo Duterte. Now, to highlight some important objectives of this presentation, I'd like to focus on migration-related issues in the context of migration diplomacy as Japan and the Philippines pursue its bilateral ties. So as I've mentioned a while ago, this is going to be just, an overview of what we're trying to do in our research. And of course, to examine Japan's immigration trajectories. This is a very important and at the same time very, very timely topic also because of the, restrictions of migration in Japan and the endless debate about immigration in Japan. And again, in the final analysis, I'd like to highlight some of the important, trajectories of research that we can further pursue vis-a-vis Philippine-Japan relations. Okay, so some important uh, uh, topics that we will be mentioned in this presentation would be, of course, Japan's demographic problems. That's the first one. The immigration outlook in Japan, the migration priorities under our President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., issues and possible research directions, and of course, the conclusion and implications, policy implications of this. Okay, so let's start with the main framework that I'd like to utilize in this research. It's basically migration diplomacy. Migration diplomacy refers to the use of diplomatic tools, instruments to control different types of mobilities. Now, migration diplomacy centers on how states employ cross-border population mobility management in their international relations or foreign policies, and how they use diplomatic means to obtain goals relating to migration. So basically, it includes both the strategic use of migration flows as a means to obtain other aims, or the use of diplomatic methods to achieve goals related to migration. Now, I think this is very, very important because migration diplomacy centers on how cross-border population mobility management is important in international relations. And as I will be mentioning later, this has become very relevant because in migration diplomacy, bilateral agreements are very essential. No? Bilateral agreements and for some memoranda of understanding. And in the case of Japan and the Philippines, we have actually concluded, or we have actually we have forged what we call the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement, which paved the way for the entry of many workers in Japan. Okay, so I will try to relate that with migration diplomacy. Now, as what we mentioned a while ago, it's very important it's very timely to discuss this because there have been a lot of discussions related to Philippine-Japan relations. Recently, President Bongbong Marcos or Ferdinand Marcos Jr. visited Japan. I think they just concluded a meeting yesterday. And there are a lot of talks about the bilateral relationship of Japan and the Philippines. No, some highlights, of course, would be number one, the fact that the two countries are marking the 70 years of diplomatic relations. So this is very important. Both the two leaders confirmed that they are deepening the economic cooperation between Japan and the Philippines and Japan and ASEAN. Okay, so I think that's a very important point. Number two, it's very important also that the 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 two parties agreed to upgrade or again rediscuss the Japan-Philippines Economic Partnership Agreement or what we call the JPEPA. So I'm going to elaborate that further later. So that's a very important agreement, no, JPEPA. And the second is the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. It has to go forward according to the talks of the two leaders. Okay? And the third one, again, in principle, they want to elevate Philippine-Japan relations from a strengthened strategic partnership to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Okay, so those are some of the things that they were able to conclude in the past meetings. Okay, so why then? There is I think, a very important question that we have to consider now is that why is that Japan would need, these? Why is it important that Japan would enter, its borders to accommodate workers or immigrants from the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries, or not only Southeast Asian countries, but from other countries? Of course, as I've mentioned a while ago, there is the demographic issue here. Okay? The population of the Japanese citizens actually fell by over 900,000. It's largest annual drop on record last year, 2025. And at the same time, the number of foreigners has actually reached a record high of nearly 3.95 million. So by age group, you can take a look at this figure from nippon.com. By age group, the working population consisting of people aged 15 to 64 stood by 73,728,000, a year-on-year decrease of 224,000. While the population of age 65 or older, you can take a look at the red and orange in the figure, increased by 17,000 to 36,000. And a very alarming portion of this would be those aged 75 or older. That is in this figure, we can see the red line here. Okay, it actually increased by 700,000. Okay, so that is the dilemma of Japan right now. No, there are a lot of seniors or senior citizens, and the working population is actually declining. The entire population is also declining. So there has to be some mechanisms to ensure that the social system and the economic system would continue and would support the economy of Japan. So in other words, there should be stable manpower in Japan. And that would be the role of the foreigners. That would be the role of the migrant workers. But the problem is that in the past years or even decades, Japan is actually known as a country with no immigration policy. And this has been a frequent debate among, politicians and even scholars or academics. No? So the policy narrative has always been that, the increased immigration would lead to social tension. Okay? Uh, that is, of course, the fact that, many conservative politicians are trying to preserve the myth of cultural homogeneity. And also, some of them would write some accounts about, foreigners taking the jobs of the locals. And some would also say that the foreigners are actually committing crimes in Japan. Okay? So there has always been this discomfort to accommodate foreigners or to make them stay in Japan for a long time. For several decades, of course, Japan is known to be a country accommodating guest workers and trainees, no? In for those who are familiar with TITP, and other mechanisms that are actually used by Japan that utilize the so-called side door entry of migration, which means to say that Japan is actually willing to accommodate workers if they will be, if they will be number one, if they will be contributing economically, if they will be able to work for a short period of time or for a temporary or on a temporary basis. But needless to say, Japan is not really willing to discuss it further when it comes to permanency or naturalization of these workers. So, of course, in the past years or in the past administrations, there have been a lot of improvements. There have been a lot of accommodations already. We can say that a lot of foreigners have already been naturalized, but um, we can still argue that the naturalization mechanism is very, very restrictive as compared to other democratic countries. And also, we can also notice that there has been a foreigner fatigue becoming a social issue in this country. One thing that is quite relevant to this discussion, sorry, is of course the debate about over tourism in Japan. Okay, so this is another okay, this is the slide about the foreigners in Japan, just to give us an idea of the foreign communities in Japan. We can actually view here that China still tops the list, almost 22.8%, followed by what? Vietnam, 16.7%, and then South Korea, 10.4%. Philippines would be the fourth. But there have been some periods when Philippines was actually third. Okay? So I think those coming from Southeast Asia, the largest as of this period would be those coming from Vietnam. Okay? So okay, I think right. I need to skip some of the slides, but okay, this is important. This slide talks about the reforms of Sanai Takaichi. Not really reform, no, but again, her leadership emphasizing the nationalist rhetoric and the tightening of the requirements for foreigners staying in Japan. We can, of course, see how there are efforts to expand the specified skilled worker or the SSW program. If you are familiar with the SSW program, it basically allows foreign nationals to work in designated industries experiencing labor shortages in Japan. There are two categories, particularly category 1 would be allowing 5-year stay. No families are allowed to stay with the workers. But for SSW2, there has been more flexibility. It is renewable, and this kind of permit would or this kind of visa would permit um family members, uh, to be brought with the immigrants. Okay, the another important thing here, or another important point in this slide, would be the nationalist rhetoric of Takaichi. As I've mentioned a while ago, there were a lot of anti-immigration comments that were actually released to the public or to the press even before her leadership, or even before she assumed as prime minister. For example, during her campaigns, she actually talked about anxieties and the success of far right populist party. She strongly opposes mass settlement and large scale political rights for foreign residents. So those are some of the things that have been pointed out by media, about her. Um, okay, so those are some of the issues related to the leadership of Sanaya Takaichi. Now we go to the um side of the Philippines, which is of course an emigration, or a labor exporting country, the Philippines. No, it has always been a labor exporting country since the 1970s, when the father of the current president, President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., tried to address economic problems by um, crafting an overseas employment program, that actually encouraged emigration or leaving the country in the 1970s. And that further developed into, a more structured framework of migration. And right now, in the present time, we can say that our government really supports, the migration of Filipinos. We have a term called a term for that. We actually call them the overseas Filipino workers. They are those Filipinos who are working abroad, and they are, of course, being monitored or even protected by the government. One thing that we can say about, the administration or administrations of the different Filipino leaders would be, of course, their strong stance on the protection of Filipinos Filipinos who are working abroad. So, in the interest of time, I think I will just, try to bring out or raise some important points here that would lead me to um um or that would support my argument about migration diplomacy, or the prospect of migration diplomacy. I talked about the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement a while ago. I think it is a very important mega treaty in between Japan and the Philippines that have paved the way for the liberalization of trade. But more importantly, there is a very significant provision in JPEPA that allows Filipino workers to go to Japan, particularly health workers, Filipino nurses and care workers. No, so every year the Philippines has been sending Filipino nurses and care workers to Japan under the framework of the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, there are a lot of discussions and debate about this. Maybe during the question and answer, I can further expound this. But really, the main point here is that many nurses and workers are actually, still um, arguing that they still experience marginalization, some of them experience discrimination, and some of them would actually be arguing that they are not really empowered as health workers in Japan. Okay, they don't feel being empowered as migrants in Japan. And that is because of the treatment of the institution. Okay, so let me just um, mention that for now. And yeah, I think I need to conclude my presentation. Uh, some policy issues and implications on Philippine-Japan relations. Again, as I've mentioned a while ago, one thing that we can further discuss is about migrant protection and precariousness. Can states such as the Japan and the Philippines provide adequate protection to the migrants, no? Who are actually working in Japan, particularly in semi-skilled or non-skilled sectors. Number two, a very essential issue also has something to do with the competencies and skills. Can Japan really recognize foreign talent and competencies? Some of the, you know, health workers in Japan are saying that they are not considered as nurses. They're considered as nursing assistants. So their skills are not really appreciated. So that's the second thing. Number three, again, a very important debate is about multiculturalism. Is there a genuine multiculturalism being implemented by the Japanese government? And then the fourth one has something to do with the prospect of integration, integration. Is Japan really ready to accept permanent migrants? So I need to end my discussion now, and I'm hoping that we can have more discussions later in the question and answer portion.
Thank you, Ron Sensei. Uh, Thank you for introducing the framework migration diplomacy. You define that as the use of diplomatic tools to control different types of mobilities. I think Ron Sensei outlined how the uh, influx of foreign workers, including from the Philippines and other parts of Southeast Asia, is backgrounded by demographic issues within Japan. However, on the other side, as Ronses explained, Japanese officials, including the current Prime Minister, Takaichi seem to take the quote-unquote no migration policy, characterized by the assumption or policy narrative of how increased migration will bring social problems. On the other hand, the Philippines, alongside other Asian ASEAN countries, are eager to send migrant workers. And the Philippines, as Ron Sensei explained, such an eagerness is apparent in the migration policies set by the government, including the current President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So, seeing the big number of Filipino workers in Japan, I think Ron Sensei raised an important question of how the authorities can balance the coexistence between the Japanese and the Filipino or the migrant workers. Okay, we'll dig more on that in the Q&A session. Thank you again, Ron Sensei, and I will move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Hafiizh Hashim from University Brunei Darussalam. His presentation is titled Rethinking Area Studies Through Strategy, Japan, ASEAN Centrality, and the Politics of Regional Order. I think this is this title is this title aligns very well with our topic for this year, which is Rethinking Area Studies Through Japan. So one of our aims is to critically rethink the notion of area. I look forward to Hafiizh Sensei's presentation. Please allow me to read Hafiizh Sensei's bio before we start. Dr. Hafiizh Hashim is an academic and policy researcher at University Brunei Darussalam.
specializing in Southeast Asian politics, regional security, and international relations. His research broadly examines ASEAN dynamics, Indo-Pacific policy, and sub-regional cooperation frameworks such as BIMP-EAGA. I'm sorry if I pronounced that in the wrong way. Within this scope, he also engaged with Japan-ASEAN relations, particularly Japan's role in supporting regional development, connectivity, and maritime security. Through his policy-oriented publications and participation in international forums, he contributes to discussions on regional governance and the evolving strategic landscape of Southeast Asia, including the role of Japan as a key partner. Right, Hafiz Sensei, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Himawan. First of all, Assalamualaikum. Selamat Hari Raya to all of you who's celebrating the Idul Adha. Yeah, and thank you for having me, Himawan, for this very fruitful session. I do believe that the Shangri-La dialogue is currently undergoing as well. So interesting times ahead for us. So today's title, today's lecture, I'm talking about rethinking area studies through strategy. So Japan, ASEAN centrality, and the politics of regional order. One thing that I want to us to think about is that how can we study regions not only as geographical areas, but also as a strategic arena. So area studies is often associated with a deep knowledge of a particular place. Usually we study its history, culture, policy, language, society, institutions, regional relationships. Though that remains very important, but the argument I want to make today is that area studies has become much more powerful when it's connected to strategy. Now, I don't mean talking about strategy like what we are seeing in the Shangri-La dialogue. So I do not only mean war, military planning, or defense policy. I mean the way states and institutions use diplomacy, economic cooperation, development assistance, security partnership, and regional narratives to manage this uncertainty and shape the environment. Japan's relationship with ASEAN is a very useful case for this. It shows us that regional order is not produced by power alone. Of course, if you've read what Pete Hegseth was saying just now, power over Trump rules. So I think he would roll over his words over that. So it also produced through trust, institution, restraint, legitimacy, and the careful management of regional expectations. So the core area argument today is simple. ASEAN area studies should not only be described by regions. It should help us explain how regional actors think strategically and how they shape regional orders. So let me begin with the basic question. Why do we need to rethink area studies? Area studies gives us something that broad theories of international relations sometimes miss. So it usually gives us regional depth, and it helps us to understand that historical memory, local institution, political cultures, leadership traditions, and the way people inside a region understand their own security and development. So for us, for Southeast Asia, this matters enormously. One, because you cannot understand ASEAN simply by applying a general theory of power politics or realist power understanding. You also need to understand the colonial legacies, our post-colonial state building, the importance of sovereignty, the fear of external domination, and ASEAN's preference for consensus and informality. But as with anything, there's also weakness. Area studies can sometimes become too descriptive. It can become a long account of what happened in a region without clearly explaining why it matters theoretically or strategically. So instead of only asking what happens in the region, we should therefore reframe our question. How do actors in this region respond to power, uncertainty, and change? That shift actually matters. because it moves us from description to explanation. Now, for example, instead of simply saying Japan has good relations with ASEAN, now we should be asking, why does Japan invest so much in ASEAN-led frameworks? Why does ASEAN welcome Japan? What does this tell us about regional order in the Indo-Pacific? So this is what I mean when we talk about rethinking area studies through strategy. Yeah. So what do I mean by strategy? In this short lecture, strategy is not limited to military affairs. Strategy is usually used in different tools, diplomatic, economic, institution, and security tools to achieve long-term political objectives under set conditions of uncertainty. It's like a means to an end. So this is important because many states, especially in Southeast Asia, do not always pursue strategy in loud or confrontational ways. Strategy can be quiet, it can be gradual, it can be institutional. It can work through meetings, development projects, infrastructure, capacity building, and carefully chosen diplomatic language. Now, Japan is a very, very good example of this. Its strategy in Southeast Asia is not only about defense cooperation, it is also about infrastructure, connectivity, supply chain, energy transition, technology standards, and support for ASEAN-led institutions. Now, when we talk about regional order, we are talking about the rules, institutions, hierarchies, and expectations that shapes how states interact in a region. Rules tell states what kind of behavior is considered acceptable. Institutions provide the platforms of dialogue. Hierarchy tells us who has influence, and legitimacy tells us which arrangements are accepted as appropriate or useful. So, when we study regional order, we are not only studying material power, we are also studying how power is mediated through institution and how actors try to make their preferred order appear legitimate. This is why ASEAN centrality becomes very, very important, especially in this geopolitical uncertainty. Now, ASEAN centrality is more than a slogan. ASEAN centrality is often misunderstood. It does not mean that ASEAN controls everything that happens in the region, because clearly ASEAN does not have the military power of the US, China, or Japan, or does it not have the economic weight of China or the strategic reach of the US? ASEAN Secretariat has only $24 million USD. That in itself is that in itself tells you something. Yeah. So ASEAN centrality is not about dominance. Instead, ASEAN centrality is about ASEAN's attempt to remain the key convening platform for regional dialogue and cooperation. So ASEAN does this through institutions such as East Asia Summit, ASEAN Regional Forum, which is really, really important, ADMM Plus, and other ASEAN-led mechanisms. So these platforms allows ASEAN to bring larger powers into a regional diplomatic setting where the language is not supposed to be about blocks, confrontation, or containment, but about dialogue, inclusivity, and cooperation. And this is why ASEAN centrality is strategic. It allows Southeast Asian states to preserve its diplomatic space, and it also helps prevent the region from becoming only an arena of great power rivalry. Now, a recent example is the 47th ASEAN Summit in KL last year, where ASEAN leaders reaffirm ASEAN unity and centrality. And I suspect that this coming October in Manila is going to be the same as well, which describes that ASEAN as the primary driving force in shaping the regional architecture. Now, for us, this matters because it shows that ASEAN continues to defend centrality even when the strategic environment is becoming crowded and more competitive. So the key point here is this: ASEAN's centrality is not about ASEAN dominance. It is ASEAN's institutional strategy for staying relevant despite limited material power. Now, the AOIP, or the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, is a very important document for understanding ASEAN's strategic position. Now, it was adopted in 2019 at a time where Indo-Pacific was becoming widely used by external powers, especially Japan, the US, Australia, and India. So, ASEAN was facing a problem. If ASEAN ignored this concept, it risks being left behind. But if it accepted someone else's Indo-Pacific vision too easily, then it risks being pulled into external strategic competition. So what did the ASEAN do? So the AOIP was ASEAN's response. It allows ASEAN to say, yes, the Indo-Pacific matters, but ASEAN will interpret in its own ways. The AOIP emphasizes ASEAN centrality, openness, inclusivity, transparency, respect for sovereignty, international law, peaceful cooperation, and ASEAN-led mechanisms. Its 4 priority areas are maritime cooperation, connectivity, sustainable development, and economic cooperation. And this is very important because the AOIP is not a hard military strategy. It does not identify an enemy. In fact, it does not present ASEAN as part of a bloc. Instead, the ASEAN used this as a diplomatic framework for managing uncertainty. And again, a recent example is the 28th ASEAN-Japan Summit in October 2025, where ASEAN and Japan reaffirmed practical cooperation under the AOIP's 4 priority areas. Now, this tells us something which is the AOIP is no longer just a document. It has become a platform through which ASEAN organizes cooperation with external partners such as Japan. Japan's role in Southeast Asia has changed significantly over time. In the immediate post-war period, Japan had to rebuild its trust after the Second World War. This was not easy for Japan. Its wartime history created deep sensitivities across Asia, including Southeast Asia. And over time, Japan rebuilt its role through economic diplomacy. It became our major source of aid, investment, infrastructure, technology, and industrial development. And this was crucial for Japan's post-war return to Southeast Asia. The Fukuda Doctrine in 1977 was especially important. It emphasizes reassurance, trust, and what Japan calls it the heart-to-heart relations with Southeast Asia. The message was that Japan would build a peaceful relationship with the region and would not become a military power in the old sense. And after the Cold War, Japan supported ASEAN-led regional institutions. So this helped Japan engage the region multilaterally and reassured ASEAN that Japan was not trying to impose a unilateral order. But in the Indo-Pacific era, Japan's role has changed again. So Japan used economic diplomacy, but that economic diplomacy has become increasingly strategic. Now, Japan links development, infrastructure, connectivity, maritime security, supply chain, technology, and energy transition to a wider vision of regional order. So what can we understand from this? So the key point here is that Japan has moved from economic reassurance to strategic engagement. But this does not mean that Japan has abandoned its diplomacy of reassurance. In fact, Japan's challenge is to become more strategic while still appearing reassuring to Southeast Asia. Japan's FOWIP is central to this shift. FOWIP is Japan's strategic vocabulary for thinking about regional order. Now, when we talked about how it emphasizes rules, freedom of navigation, open trade, maritime security, quality infrastructure, connectivity, and cooperation across the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Now, in 2023, Japan announced a new plan for FOIP, and it was organized around 4 pillars. The first principle is for peace and rules for prosperity. Second is addressing challenges in the Indo-Pacific ways. The third is multi-layered connectivity. And the fourth is extending efforts for security and the use of the sea to the air. So what's interesting about here is that FOIP is deliberately broad. It's not only about naval power. It includes development, climate, food security, cybersecurity, connectivity, and economic resilience. And this gives Japan somewhat flexibility. Japan can talk about security, but when it wants to talk about infrastructure, technology, energy, and development, it can also do so. So this is why the FOIP matters for area studies. If we only study Japan's military role, we miss the wider picture. Japan's strategy is not simply about hard power. It is also about shaping the environment in which regional states make choices. And in this sense, FOIP allows Japan to act strategically while still presenting its role as cooperative, inclusive, and rules-based. So why does Japan matters to ASEAN and vice versa? Now we come to the relationship where between Japan and ASEAN, where ASEAN centrality matters to Japan because it gives Japan a legitimate and reassuring way to engage Southeast Asia. Japan does not want to be seen as imposing an external order on the region. By supporting ASEAN centrality and the AYP, Japan can show that its Indo-Pacific strategy is not simply about bloc politics or confrontation. Now, this matters for Southeast Asian states because states are, more often than not, usually cautious. Many ASEAN members do not want to choose sides between major powers. They want external partners, but they also want strategic autonomy. So this is why we always focus on non-confrontation and sovereignty when it comes to ASEAN. And Japan is useful to ASEAN because it provides infrastructure finance, development cooperation, technology partnership, maritime capacity building, supply chain diversification, and support for ASEAN-led institutions. And this is why also Japan is also seen as less polarizing than either the US or China. And it actually gives Japan a particularly diplomatic advantage. But that being said, Japan is also more active in security cooperation. One example is the Japan's official security assistant, the OSA. This is different from the traditional development assistance, which provides equipment, supplies, and infrastructure support to armed forces and related organizations of partner countries. So, in 2025, October, Japan signed a 3.1 billion yen OSA project with Malaysia, including a diving support vessel and equipment linked to regional monitoring activities. And if I'm not mistaken, Philippines also received this as well. This shows that Japan's now matters to ASEAN not only as an economic partner, but also as a security capacity building partner. Now, what does this tells us? Now, Japan helps ASEAN states maintain options, while ASEAN gives Japan's legitimacy and regional access. Now, let me end this with the central tension. Now, FOIP and the AOIP overlap in many areas. Both talk about connectivity, maritime cooperation, rule of law, economic cooperation, and regional stability. But more often than not, they are not the same. FOIP is more strategic and geopolitical. It reflects Japan's concern about maritime security, China's rise, supply chain vulnerability, and the future of rules-based order. AOIP is more cautious, inclusive, and ASEAN-centered. It avoids naming enemies, it avoids bloc politics, it tries to keep the regional architecture open, and this actually creates a tension. On the one hand, Japan supports ASEAN centrality. It works with ASEAN and repeatedly endorses ASEAN-led mechanism. On the other hand, some of Japan's most important security cooperation happens bilaterally or through smaller groupings. A good example is the Japan-Philippines Reciprocal Access Agreement. It was signed in July 2024 and entered into force in September 2025. So this agreement actually facilitates cooperations between Japan's self-defense force and the armed forces of the Philippines, including joint exercises and disaster relief. From Japan and the Philippines' perspective, this strengthens deterrence and maritime security. But from an ASEAN centrality perspective, it raises a harder question. If more security cooperation happens through bilateral and unilateral arrangement, does ASEAN remain central? So I think this is the final takeaway for this. Area study should not only study region as places. It should study region as arenas of power, restraint, adaptation, and order making. The Japan-ASEAN case shows that regional order is not produced by power alone. It is produced through institution, trust, legitimacy, development, security, and strategic restraint. So, to rethink our area studies strategy is to take regional actors seriously, not merely as objects of great power competition, but as makers of regional order. Thank you.
Thank you, Hafiizh Sensei. Thank you again, Hafiizh Sensei, for sharing your understanding on the notion of area studies. It is interesting that you argued that area studies should not only describe regions, but instead it should explain how regional order is made. This is why, according to Hafiizh Sensei, ASEAN centrality and its relations with Japan is an important case study. Particularly, Hafiizh Sensei mentioned about the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, a platform through which regional cooperations, including with Japan, who also built its own regional framework known as the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, are based on. Okay, we will discuss more on that in the question and answer session. Now, please let me move on to our third speaker, Ayu Azhariyah Sensei. Ayu Azhariyah Sensei from Universitas Hasanuddin in Makassar, Indonesia, who will bring her presentation titled Japanese Studies in Indonesia and Post-War Japan-Indonesia Cooperation. There has been much research to critically examine the development of Japanese studies in Southeast Asia, and I believe Ayu Sensei's talk will add a perspective to such an examination. I will read Ayu Sensei's short bio before we begin. Ayu Azhariyah Sensei is a lecturer in the Department of Japanese Literature at Universitas Hasanuddin, Indonesia, with academic interest in Japanese studies, anthropology of education, and Indonesia-Japan relations. He holds multiple academic degrees from Universitas Hasanuddin and currently is pursuing graduate studies at Nagoya University, where she is also undertaking she's in the PhD program. Work explores history of Japanese language education, education in Indonesia, Japanology, and social-linguistic phenomena. Okay, Ayu Sensei, the floor is yours. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Thank you very much for Himawan Sensei, and good day and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayu Azhariyah, as Himawan Sensei already introduced me. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee, especially Himawan Sensei, for inviting me to this online seminar series of the International Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium 2026. And it's also a pleasure to meet the other speakers by online, yeah, Ron Sensei and Hafiizh Sensei. I would also like to thank all participants for joining us today. And today, maybe a little bit different with Ron Sensei and Hafiizh Sensei theme. I would like to invite all the participants back to around 60 years ago. So today I will briefly present part of my dissertation research on Japanese studies in Indonesia, focusing on post-war Japan-Indonesia cooperation and the development of Japanese studies in Indonesian higher education. I'm sorry, I will share my presentation first.
Okay, we can see it now.
Is it
Thank you,
okay,
Sensei.
Sensei?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Wait a minute. Sorry, Sensei. Is it okay?
Yes, I can see it
Okay.
clearly.
Okay, so today's presentation, actually, I would like to divide it into two main parts, but I know about the limitation of the time. Maybe I only can present one part of this agenda, but I will try to also present the second part. So the first part, I will discuss the development of Japanese studies through the establishment of Japan-related study programs in Indonesian higher education from the perspective of post-war Japan-Indonesia cooperation perspective. And in the second part, I try to briefly explain the current trends in Japanese studies in Indonesian higher education. So my presentation will be like case studies on Indonesian Japan studies. Okay, so for the first part, I will present this Japanese studies in Indonesia from the post-war Japan-Indonesia cooperation perspective. So why post-war? And here I mentioned post-war means 90s. So why the reason why I focus on the 1960s is because this was the period of guided democracy under Indonesia's first president, as we know, named Sukarno. And during this period, education, especially higher education, became strongly connected to political ideology and national development. And the government introduced the guided study system and ideological curricula, while universities rapidly expanded across Indonesia. At the same time, Indonesia promoted an anti-Western orientation, which created a favorable environment for cooperation with Japan as an Asian countries. Even though maybe some scholars also included Japan as Western. And how about the expansion of the higher education in 50s until 70s? As we see in this table clearly shows the rapid expansion of Indonesian higher education from the 50s to 70s, especially during the 60s. For example, we can see here in 1960, Indonesia had only 59 universities with around 20,000 students. However, by 1975, the number of universities had more than doubled to 136, while the student population also increased significantly to more than 46 students. And also at the same time, the number of lecturers also rapidly increased. And one important aspect of post-war Japan-Indonesia relations was the 1958 War Reparations Agreement, as we know. What makes this agreement unique is that it not only focuses on economic assistance and infrastructure development, But it also, especially for Indonesia, it also includes educational and training programs for Indonesian youth as Sukarno's request. Through this framework, many Indonesians had opportunities to study and do training in Japan. And at the same time, Japanese assistance in education, culture, and academic exchange also influenced the development of Indonesian higher education, especially in fields related to Japan, such as Japanese language education and Japanese studies. And before discussing the establishment of Japan-related study programs in Indonesian higher education during the 1960s, it is important to note that Japan language education after the war was very different from the pre-war and wartime periods. Before World War II and during the Japanese military occupation, the Japanese language education is very different with the post-war Japanese language education. So in the post-war period, especially during the 1960s, Japan-related education in higher education gradually developed into two major academic streams. It's based on Chandra's research. The first was the Japanese language stream, and the second was the Japanese studies stream. So in my research, I tried to further examine these two streams from different perspective. That is the perspective of Japanese post-war educational cooperation. Especially at that time, there were two educational cooperation named the Colombo Plan and Nihon Kenkyu Koza Program. And actually, I'm a little bit curious about this Japan-related education also. I'm curious about Japan-related education within Southeast Asian countries. As it mentioned in Chandra's research, there are two streams, and it's the case study of Indonesia. I'm just curious, is it also occur in other Southeast Asian countries or not? Maybe we can discuss it later. And I will try to explain briefly about these two educational cooperation. For the first, the Colombo Plan. So the Colombo Plan played an important role in the development of Japanese language education in Indonesia during the 1960s. Originally, the Colombo Plan was established as a regional economic cooperation framework for South and Southeast Asian countries, but it also included educational and technical cooperation programs. Indonesia itself joined in 1953, and Japan joined in 1 year after in 1954. And since 1957, Japan has also increased the number of accepted trainees and dispatched technical experts. So in the Indonesian case, Pajajaran University, one of university in Bandung, Indonesia, became one of the major examples. So in 1963, Japanese language experts were sent to the Pajajaran University through the Colombo Plan. And at the time, Japanese had also started to be introduced as a second foreign language in Indonesian high schools, creating increasing demand for Japanese language teachers and specialists. So as a result, the Colombo Plan contributed not only to language education itself, but also to the institutional development of Japan-related study programs in Indonesia. Okay, next. This is what I want to explain or present in my presentation. So, what was Nihon Kenkyu Koza? Nihon Kenkyu Koza program, or in English we can say the Japan Studies program, was a program initiated by the Japanese government, especially through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or MOFA, as part of its international cultural diplomacy after World War II. And the main purpose of this program was not only to promote Japanese language learning, but also to deepen academic understanding of Japan through culture, history, society, and other interdisciplinary fields. And at the same time, Japan also hoped to strengthen mutual understanding and improve its international presence through educational and cultural exchange. And this program, this Nihon Kenkyu Kosa program, mainly targeted Southeast Asian countries. And in 1965, the first Japan studies program was established at Thammasat University in Thailand. And later, similar programs were introduced in several countries in this region, including Indonesia. So in this sense, Nihon Kenkyu Kosa program became an important foundation for the development of the Japanese studies stream in Southeast Asian higher education, I think. So, as I mentioned before, this Nihon Kenkyu Koza was implemented not only in Indonesia, but also in several Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And this shows that the program was part of Japan's broader post-war academic and cultural diplomacy strategy toward Southeast Asia during the 60s. Now, for your information, my data, most of my data are from this site. So this kind of historical data can still be accessed through the official website of Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, especially in the Diplomatic Blue Book archives, which are very useful sources for studying Japanese post-war educational and cultural diplomacy in Southeast Asia. If you're interested, please go to this website. And next, as I mentioned before, that this Nihon Kenkyu Koza not only in Indonesia, but also another country in Southeast Asian countries. So this table provides more detailed information about the implementation of Nihon Kenkyu Kosa in Southeast Asia during the late 60s. So the table also shows the the names of lecturers and their institutional affiliation and the subjects they taught, such as Japanese language, Japanese cultural history, Japanese economic history, and international relations. And this indicates that the program already had an interdisciplinary academic orientation from the beginning. So not only teach Japanese language. So about Japanese studies in Indonesia. Why I have to mention Universitas Indonesia here, I will explain more. So Universitas Indonesia was quite unique compared to other Japan-related study programs established during the 60s. While many universities at the time mainly focused on practical Japanese language education and teacher training, Universitas Indonesia developed a more research-oriented and interdisciplinary approach. So as mentioned at the video profile, it's established in 1967 with support from the Japanese government through the Nihon Kenkyu Kosa program. Japanese studies at University Indonesia was designed not only to teach Japanese language, but also to promote academic research on Japan itself. So this means that students studied a wide range of subjects, including Japanese history, culture, politics, economics, and society. So in other words, Japanese, not only Japanese language, but also any other subjects related to Japan. So this characteristic made Universitas Indonesia different from institutions which were more strongly oriented toward practical language education and the preparation of Japanese language teachers. If we look further, I'm sorry, it's only written in Japanese, but I try to explain to you all. So the curriculum of the Japanese studies stream at Universitas Indonesia was designed to be research-oriented and interdisciplinary. Initially, students focused on core courses related to Japanese culture, like I said before, Japanese culture, society, and language, including subjects such as Japanese history, Japanese politics, Japanese economy, Japanese culture, Japanese literature, and Japanese thought. So what is particularly noteworthy is that many of the instructors dispatched through the Nihon Kenkyu Koza were native Japanese, but their academic backgrounds were often in fields other than Japanese language teaching, such as area studies, history, or social sciences. So this means that students were exposed not only the Japanese language, but also to broader perspective of Japanese society and culture from scholars with the, diverse expertise. And then next, so this is the subject, the list of subject of the Japanese Studies department in Universitas Indonesia in 69 until 72. So there is Japanese history, politics, Japanese politics, Japanese economy, Japanese education, Japanese thought, Japanese culture, art history, and Japanese literary history. So it's very different with the other Japan-related study programs in Indonesia at that time. So how about the current Japanese studies trend in Indonesia, Indonesian higher education? I try to mention some point. So currently, Japanese-related program in Indonesia continue to expand in both number and academic diversity. So while teacher training and Japanese language education still remain important, interdisciplinary approaches to Japanese studies are also becoming increasingly popular. And since I'm from Makassar, eastern part of Indonesia, I try to mention some new, I don't know, it's new development or development on Japanese studies in Eastern Indonesia. So this is some data I collect from some website that provide about the study program, Japan-related study program in Indonesia. So there are so many name of study Japan-related study program in Indonesian higher education. And yes, and we can see that Japan-related education today is no longer limited only to traditional Japanese language or literature programs. In addition, it's also there is also Japanese language and culture, Japan studies, and even business-oriented Japanese communication programs. So this table shows us that Japan-related study program in Indonesia already many shape of Japan-related study program. And now about the development in Eastern Indonesia, I don't know it's unfortunately thing or what, but currently I can mention that only 2 universities officially have Japan-related study programs in Eastern Indonesia. Manado State University with Japanese language education in North Sulawesi, and Hasanuddin university with Japanese literature in South Sulawesi. And for 14 universities also offer Japanese language courses in Papua, West Nusa Tenggara, East Nusa Tenggara, South Sulawesi, and the most is in North Sulawesi, but not Japan-related study program, only Japanese language courses. And the growing presence of vocational training institution also can be seen, like this not only this 26 LPK or vocational training institution is only some of examples in eastern part of Indonesia. But most of these institutions focus on Japanese language training, technical internship preparation, and employment opportunities in Japan. So I think it's some of last of my presentation, but about the alumni profile who become lecturer. So according to Chandra, in 1994, graduates of Japan-related programs often carry the academic identity and educational orientation of the institution where they studied. And as a result, when they later become lecturers at other universities, they also indirectly spread the same academic stream. So for example, many Japanese language teachers at Indonesia Education University originally graduated from Pajajaran University, which contributed to the spread of the Japanese language-oriented stream. Meanwhile, universities such as, if I can mention some of Universitas Nasional dan Dharma Persada University were more closely connected to Universitas Indonesia, which emphasized Japanese studies and interdisciplinary approaches. So this suggests that the development of Japan-related education in Indonesia was influenced not only by institution, but also by academic networks formed through alumni and lecturer mobility. So as a conclusion, from preliminary, preliminary data collection, graduates from Pajajaran University played an important role in spreading the Japan language stream to many universities in Indonesia. Actually, it's also including in Hasanuddin University. And however, the situation today is becoming more complex and inclusive. For example, as I mentioned before, Hasanuddin University, even though most of the lecturers are graduates from Pajajaran University, some of the lecturers also graduate from another university. So Hasanuddin University, the academic orientation is no longer dominated only by language studies, but also includes literature, history, and cultural studies. And this is partly influenced by the diverse educational backgrounds of lecturers coming from different university. And so to conclude, this is the last part. The 60s became an important turning point for the development of Japanese-related studies in Indonesian higher education. Post-war Japan-Indonesia cooperation, especially through programs such as Colombo Plan and Nihon Kenkyu Koza, helped shape two major academic streams, the Japanese language stream and the Japanese studies stream. Although these streams have evolved and become more diverse today, their historical influence can be still seen in the orientation, curriculum, and academic networks of Japan-related programs across Indonesian university. Therefore, an important question for future research is whether these two streams still exist as separate academic poles or whether they are gradually evolving into more hybrid and interdisciplinary forms. Okay, so these are the main reference used in this presentation, including previous studies and official Japanese government document. Thank you very much for your attention. Goseichou arigatou gozaimashita. I'm looking forward for further discussion on the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ayu Sensei. Faisal, Anto, can you please check if you can hear the azan in my background? Ayu Sensei, can you hear the azan in my background?
There's no
Okay.
advance sound in your background.
Okay, so good. So thank you, Ayu Sensei, again. Ayu Sensei made a chronological outline of Japanese studies in Indonesia, starting from the 1960s, where, according to her, interdisciplinary approach in the field has already appeared. For example, in the Japanese studies program at Universitas Indonesia. But I think more importantly, Ayu also mentioned the current development of Japanese studies program in Eastern Indonesia. This is important because currently there has been kind of over centralization in Western Indonesia. So I believe that Ayu Sensei has shown that Japanese studies in Indonesia is not only about Jakarta or other parts of Western Indonesia, but also other areas within the country. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, minasan, we will now proceed to the question and answer session. I am sure that our three speakers, but I am informed that unfortunately Hafiz Sensei has other appointments, so he could not join the Q&A session. So the Q&A session will only be joined by Ron Sensei and Ayu Sensei. Just to refresh, let me briefly sum up the topic discussed by our distinguished speakers. Ron Sensei outlines Japan's conservative immigration policy and the migration priorities set by the government of the Philippines. Migrations of the Filipinos to Japan is a reality. So Ron Sensei raises an important question on how, for example, multiculturalism or coexistence can be maintained under such migration policy or migration diplomacy gap. Hafiz Sensei argued the importance of putting area studies not just a field of discipline to describe regions. He emphasizes that the field needs to explain how regional order is made. To do that, he introduced the case studies of ASEAN centrality and how it relates to Japan. And lastly, but not least, Ayu Sensei made a chronological outline of the development of Japanese studies programs at universities in Indonesia. And more importantly, she also introduced the development of the field in the eastern part of Indonesia. Right. If you have any comments or questions, please use the raise hand button and we will invite you to the floor, or you can also use the chat box to send us your questions. Okay.
Hi.
Okay, Adri Sensei.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, Ron and Ayu Sensei. I would like to address my question to Ron first about migration because I'm also interested in the migration issue in Japan, especially when Indonesia and the Philippines both have the similar EPA program with Japan. And it also reflects on my experience also with Himawan Sensei, maybe because we used to teach at EPA program once, right? And held by the Japan Foundation. And we can see that not to to glaze the experience because we can see the quality of the the workers, the future workers now working in Japan. Actually, they are not sufficient yet to be working in Japan, bluntly speaking. But the government has to send them anyway. And that kind of trend is continued until now. When I think Ayu Sensei already listed so many LPK or the vocational training institution. And I could say that maybe there are rogue vocational institution there where they don't properly train the students, and then they send them anyway to Japan without without having the cultural, not only language but also cultural competency. So when we're talking about bilateral relationship between countries, we also have to talk about not only Japan but also the sender countries like Indonesia or the Philippines. And for the context in Indonesia, we have this discourse of unemployability of Indonesian young generations, where they couldn't get jobs in Indonesia because the job market here is very rough for the youth generation. And yeah, in Indonesians know the kabur aja dulu discourse, right? And then going to Japan for working as as the Jishuse is one of the options that Indonesians can take, and that is perceived as a business opportunity for lots of people who eventually built that rogue LPK. So I want to know about the situation in the Philippines, because I'm starting to see this phenomenon in, institutionalized human trafficking, let's say. So what is the situation in the Philippines regarding that issue? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Ron Sensei, if you would like to answer the question.
Yes, thank you, Aldri Sensei. Yeah, the first of all, you mentioned about the supportive institution. It's also very relevant to the case of the Filipinos, particularly those under the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement, or JPEPA. Those who are not really supported by the institutions, or who feel that the institutions do not provide adequate support to their training and to their language proficiency support, are are also those who actually fail the licensure examination, and eventually they return to the Philippines, so they do not stay in Japan for a long time. Now, the related to the second point that you mentioned, I think the situation in the Philippines is that we're talking about JPEPA, Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement. These are actually Filipino nurses and care workers. Most of those who are going to Japan are licensed Filipino nurses. So they were able to, obtain licensure exam. They were able to obtain the necessary certificates and license in the Philippines. But when they go to Japan, they still have to undergo the adequate training. I'm sorry, training, and to take the examination. Unfortunately, the main issue that they confront is really the language proficiency. So many of them fail the examination in Japan. And I think that's also the similar dilemma for the Indonesians and also the Vietnamese. But as far as I know, Vietnamese are actually doing better than the Filipinos. I haven't read the recent update regarding the status or the accomplishment of Indonesian nurses recently, but usually they have the same situation. It's usually the language barrier, the difficulty of passing the licensure examination for the Filipinos and Indonesians because of the language. But when it comes, of course, to the service that they provide, or because the training that they were able to obtain in the Philippines, they're really ready to work in the healthcare industry. Uh, One important point that I need to mention is that we have nursing profession is very very popular in the Philippines. So those who are not really able to um, to pass the licensure examination are actually more tempted to go back to the Philippines and explore other countries. And I could say that maybe yeah, I could hypothesize that more Filipinos are actually targeting other Western countries or Western destination countries. So Japan is merely a place where they can obtain experience. Okay, it's just a place where they can have an experience so that they can remigrate to other Western English speaking countries. I'm not sure if that is the same with Indonesians, but that is usually the case for the Filipino nurses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ram Sensei. I just would to also address Andre Sensei's question. I think you mentioned about LPK, right? The vocational program for migrant worker.
Oh, sorry, maybe I would like to specify the question to Ayu Sensei then regarding LPK. So I really don't know the situation in the Eastern Indonesian LPK, but can you, if you have research about this, what about the let's say quality of the teachers of the LPK in Eastern Indonesia area, because the competency of the teachers also has become a concern in LPK discourse in Jabodetabek. So I want to know more about LPK in East Indonesia.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for your concern, Aldri Sensei. So, as I mentioned before, in my slide, it is only some of example of LPK in eastern part of Indonesia. So, there are so many LPK in eastern part of Indonesia. And as you asked me about the quality of the teacher, the person who teach maybe Japanese languages or Japanese culture to the student at LPK. I cannot mention some of exact answer. But it's only I never do some research about that. But through my experience, I have some information about the teacher of the LPK, some of the alumni from Japan internship. Yeah, internship. So maybe they never learn about Japanese, but in the institution of academic institution, but they learn Japanese by their experience when they work. And also, I have some information that the teacher from the LPKs also graduate. Some of our alumni from Hasanuddin University or some of Japanese related study program from other universities. So in our, for example, Hasanuddin University, actually we have one subjects that call Japanese language teaching. So if you ask about the quality, I cannot generalization about the quality, but as I can share with you is some of alumni already learn about how to teach Japanese language, but about the quality, I cannot answer anything.
Okay.
Maybe eastern part of Indonesia and western part of Indonesia also share same issues, I think.
Yes.
Thank you, Ayu Sensei.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Ayu Sensei, for the questions. We actually are running out of time, but if anyone wants to ask a question. One more question, perhaps. If anyone, just please raise your hand, or you can also as well write your question in the chat box. Okay. We received something from the chat box. Let me read. My name is Pratama from UPN Veteran, Jawa Timur. Sorry, I'm actually not sure for whom this question is for. Maybe I can help direct this question to the right speaker. So I think this is for both of the speakers. The question is there a significant municipality level collaboration or cooperation between Japan and ASEAN? And has this been affected by the political situation between Japan and ASEAN? Okay. Pratama, if you'd like to ask your question directly, so we can perhaps confirm what you mean by municipality level collaboration or cooperation. Can you do that? So do you mean collaboration between cities in Southeast Asia and Japan? So, for
Yes.
example, okay. So,
Yeah. For example, between sister cities.
Okay. So this is not directly perhaps related to the presentations of our speakers, but yes, Ron Sensei, Ai Sensei, would you like to give examples of such collaborations, perhaps?
Yes, there are actually a lot of cities in the Philippines that have also signed an agreement with Japanese cities. But since my line of research is about migration, let me just confine my answer to the migration dynamics. No, most of the sister city agreements between Philippine cities and Japanese cities are only limited to training and student mobility, I think. No, so I've came across some reading materials about this, but yes, this is not really my line of research, but I can confirm that there have already been efforts between Philippine cities, particularly here in Metro Manila and Japanese cities, um, collaborating so that they can send trainees or those who are willing to be trained, and even students who are actually undergoing some skill training in a particular sector, but that's only for a short period of time. Yeah. So I think more collaboration and meetings about this, but there has not been a formal um national, framework to support this kind of mobility.
Thank you, Ron Sensei, for providing the answer that is related to what you talk about. So the not only state-to-state cooperations, but also cooperations between cities are eventually related to migration. Okay, Ai Sensei, do you have anything to say about
Okay, as you mentioned before about the sister city, actually, Indonesia has so many sister city with Japan. I try to mention one of example. Uh, uh, Makassar city government already have so many cooperation or relation with some Japanese cities, and but I also support some of the this cooperation as a interpreter. So I can mention not the detail of the cooperation, but most of them are about the technical cooperation. So like some of experts from Japan came to Makassar city, and they teach or train Indonesian or Makassar cities government staff, and then from after some years they will finish the cooperation, and then this Makassar city staff will continue the what they already learned. So as I can say that from Makassar to some of Japan city, it's about technical cooperation. However, how about the Japan and Asian, some of Asian countries cities, and also Makassar? I never had some of example of that. Only Makassar and city in Japan. Okay, I hope it's answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Ayu Sensei. Thank you, Pratama, for the question. We actually have received one more question from Fitiani Anwar Sensei from from Hasanuddin University. So, Ayu Sensei colleague there. Let me just read this. Thank you for the three very interesting presentations, especially the data on Eastern Indonesia current condition. The question is for Ayu Sensei. How is your opinion about the Japanese studies future in Indonesia relate with the current job vacancies or market condition in Japan for Indonesian workers? It's not about the language in LPK, etc., but it's more about Japanese studies, including literature, history, linguistics. Okay. I think I'd like to also extend the question to Ron Sensei about the Japanese studies in the Philippines. Perhaps you can just briefly introduce the condition in the Philippines. Okay, Ayu Sensei, would you like to answer Fitiani Sensei's question?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question from Fitiani Sensei. So about the Japanese studies future in Indonesia related to the current job vacancies or market condition in Japan for Indonesian workers. I think we already know that if we want to work in Japan, the most important thing is to have some ability in Japanese language. So before go to Japan to do some work, we need to prepare our ability in Japanese languages. So I think for the Japanese languages is still important thing if we want to go to Japan for work. However, if we try to have some job not related to Japan, not really, and also not it's not necessary to go to Japan. I think Japanese language is optional. And how about the Japanese studies? I think Japanese studies is still important if we do some work related to Japan. Why? Because if we want to work in Japan or with counterpart for Japanese, we not only need to know about Japanese language, but how the Japan culture or tradition. So I think if we want to work in Japan or related to Japan, I think Japanese studies future in Indonesia is still good. So I only can say like that.
Okay, thank you, Ayu Sensei. So, Ron Sensei, to just brief you a bit, there have been this worrying discourse by our authorities, our government people here, who stated or who questioned the relevance of social and humanities related programs at our universities. These include Japanese studies, which in Indonesia usually are under the Faculty of Humanities or Faculty of Social Sciences. So to extend the question, I would like to ask if you also have the kind of similar situation there in the Philippines, and how do you and your colleague react to that this existential sort of crisis?
I am not really aware if there are issues related to that, but every now and then, of course, there are debates about, where should the funding go and what should be prioritized in the national universities and even in private universities. Um, of course, a lot of me- several um, several administrators would argue that uh, science and technology should be prioritized in this day and age. Of course, undermining again the importance of humanities education. But of course, Japanese studies as part of the humanities education is very important for me. It's very essential for us to convince the academic community, not only in our respective universities, but also in the region and even beyond, to always appreciate, cultivate, or always appreciate critical thinking, cultural awareness, history and philosophy. These are all part of humanities education. And again, Japanese studies in the region should actually be strengthened and solidified. No, I think it's very important for us to provide holistic, uh, critical thinking to our, students.
Thank you, Ron Cesar, for
Thank you.
the answer. Unfortunately, due to the limitation of the time, I need to end our session here again. Thank you so much, Ron Sensei, Ayu Sensei, and Hafiz Sensei, who previously here with us. And with this, I return the lead to our MC, Faris. Faris, よろしくお願いします。
Thank you. As we come to the end of today's session, we would now like to move on to the closing remark. But before that, we kindly invite our participants to join us for a group photo. If your camera is available and you're comfortable turning it on, we will now start taking the group photo. Please open your cameras.
Okay, Faris, I think we can start taking photos.
Okay. On my mark, please follow my lead. 1, 2, 3. And then the next slide. 1, 2, 3. And the last slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you for your participation in the group photo. You may close your cameras now. Now, let us proceed to the closing remark, which will be delivered by Himawan Pratama Sensei, the head of Center for Japanese Studies, Universitas Indonesia. Himawan Sensei, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you again, Faris. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Center for Japanese Studies, and the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. Please let me express my gratitude to all of you today. Special thanks to our three distinguished speakers, Ron Bridget Vilog Sensei from the Salle University, Hafiizh Hashim Sensei from University Brunei Darussalam, and Ayu Azhariyah Sensei from Universitas Hasanuddin for sharing their insights on Japanese studies in Southeast Asia. I also would like to express our center's gratitude to the Japan Foundation for the support provided that enables this initiative in bringing ideas to develop global Japanese studies from Southeast Asia. I think Koike Wakao-san is here. So, Koike-san, thank you for the support by the Japan Foundation. Next month, we will hold the third edition of the series, of which details will be informed by Faris later. We hope that the entire events of the Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium will give clear examples of diversity of Japanese studies and how cross-border network of friendship is built through academic exchanges. Again, thank you everyone for participating today. We look forward to seeing you again at our next events. Thank you so much. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Himawan Sensei, for the closing remark. Now, before we officially end today's session, I'd like to share a few brief announcements. First, on June 24th, our upcoming book review event, Ibuki Reading Club, will be held in the library of the Center of Japanese Studies and also online through the Zoom. In this month, Ibuki we will be discussing the book titled Sayo, or The Chatting Time by Osamu Dazai, with our speaker Andrew Setiawan, who will lead the discussion about the book. Second, on the 27th of June 2026, we will be having our next session of the online seminar series, Japanese Studies in Southeast Asia, with other scholars who will be eager to share their insight with all of us. For June, we will be having Atmadi Hasan Sensei from University Malaya, Kong Min Hang Sensei from Vietnam National University, and Nunuk Endah Sri Mulyani Sensei from Universitas Erlangga, who will be presenting their insight on Japanese studies. I hope you who have joined us today may join us in next session. Lastly, we warmly invite you to the International Japanese Studies Research Workshop and Symposium 2026, which will take place on August the 4th and 5th of 2026 at the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia. On-site and online participation will be available. We look forward to your participation. Please stay connected with us through our social media channels and official website for the latest update on our program and activities. We hope to see you again in our next session and our next event. Honjutsu no seminar ni gosanka itadaki. Makoto ni arigato gozaimashita. Jika no event ni gosanka wo kokoro kara omasu shite orimasu. Mata oai shimashou. Arigato gozaimashita.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Ron Sensei, Ayu Sensei, Koike-san, thank you for coming.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Okay, thank you. See you in August, Ron Sensei and Ayu Sensei.
See you.
See you.
Okay, so okay, bye. Thank you so much.